Hi, I'm Christine, and welcome to Yin Yoga to help us meet the resistance. What is the resistance? What do I mean when I say that? I'm talking about that resistance that's I can't seem to get myself up off the couch. I can't seem to do what I know needs getting done. That type of resistance. Whenever we hear just do it, just get up, just do it, just kick yourself in the butt and get to it, it can elicit some feelings of shame if we haven't gotten to it already, or if we keep trying and we don't quite know how to get ourselves to it, right? And I just wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit and say, maybe there's a reason for the resistance. And if we're just telling ourselves, you know what, you should just get to it, you should just kick yourself in the butt, you should just get off the couch, you should just do it, we might just be creating shame around that makes us feel like we're not good enough. When really, if we stop and we question it for a moment, there might be a reason why we're feeling that resistance. So you can check out my blog post over on my website, christine-gannett.com, where I talk about 4 steps to help us manage that resistance. And just briefly, those 4 steps are: first, identify what the resistance even is. Why are we having a hard time getting to it? Create a plan, because only once you know what the resistance is can you have a plan to address it head on and actually maybe bust through it, as opposed to just telling myself, oh, I'm not good enough because I haven't been able to get to it yet, right? So identify what it is, have a plan, and then, create realistic expectations about what it is that we're getting to and at what frequency, at what rate, and how quickly, and what our desired results really are at what pace. Right. And then the 4th step is course correct often, because anytime we are trying to make changes in our lives and we are trying to get to something, if we're trying to get off the couch, if we're trying to take on healthy habits and we keep meeting with resistance, it probably means that there's a little bit more complex of a plan in store for us. So we need to be attentive to that and move with it. In today's yin yoga practice, we are going to hold some long held stretches like you do in yin. And we're going to take that moment to kind of notice, okay, there's a resistance in the body. And how can I even be with that and identify what is happening, why I'm meeting that resistance, and how I can work my way through it? So for today's practice, you will need a couple of blocks and you'll need a bolster. And we are going to start just by sitting comfortably. If you'd like to sit with your hips elevated a little bit, I do recommend that you do that for just a moment, as we just take that moment to settle in and get rooted, preparing ourselves for our practice. So feeling a heaviness through your base, the sides of your body long and tall, letting the shoulders just roll back and down softly, letting your eyelids close, and tuning in with your breath. And I'll invite you for today's practice to set an intention. Why are you here on your yoga mat with me today? Setting an intention of what it is you are here to bring into your yoga practice, or perhaps what it is you're hoping to take away from your yoga practice. You can open your eyes and just roll your shoulders a few times here as we release some tension in the upper body. And go the other direction. And then inhale, take your arms up and overhead, get a nice side body stretch. Exhale, hands down the center line. One more like that. Inhale, reach up high. And exhale, hands to the heart. Good. Again, inhale, reach up high. And this time just side bend over to one side. Take a couple of deep breaths into the side of the body. Inhale up again and exhale into the other side. Inhaling up. This time we'll take a twist. So as you come down, just take one hand holding the opposite leg, the other hand on the floor behind you, little tented fingers so that you can press down and sit up really tall. Roll both of your shoulders back as you then try to guide even your upper back around, looking over your shoulder behind you, still sitting tall. Deep breaths here. Inhale, unravel, arms up overhead. Exhale, twist to the other side. Use your inhale to feel yourself sitting a little taller and your exhale to feel like you're going a little deeper. Inhale, arms up overhead one more time. And exhale, hands in the heart. Good. So we will begin. We're going to come onto our hands and our knees. I'm going to invite you to keep your props up near the top of your mat for today's practice. And we are going to start by taking our right foot up the length of the mat to the outside of our hands. So it's out wide. And resting the hands underneath the shoulders for the moment. So make sure you've got enough space here between your two legs. If you're in kind of tight like this, you might just want to pick up that back knee and back it up a little bit so you feel like you're creating some space between your two legs. And before we really settle into the pose, we'll just take a moment to feel the body getting into this shape and perhaps already identifying where there might be some resistance in your body. Resistance, in this case, feeling perhaps like a little bit of stretch, maybe a sense that the body has a hard time even making the shape, a lack of mobility or ability to be in any given shape. So just kind of noticing what you've got going on in this moment. And then to help us go a little deeper into this pose, if that's what feels like an invitation in your body today, you can come down onto your elbows. Now, you might find that the floor is a little far away for that. So you can use your blocks or even your bolster and bring your elbows onto that elevated place. You want to try not to overly round in the back and just feel yourself settling in without creating too much tension in the neck and the shoulders and the arms. So if that does happen, then it might be a good sign that you're better off staying up on your hands. And if you've got lots of mobility, if you haven't quite met the resistance yet, you can come all the way to the ground. And use your breath to meet that resistance and soften it as we take this first moment just to identify. So, what is this resistance? Is it even physical? Is it even physical? Perhaps what you're feeling in your body today is sort of secondary to the resistance that you might be feeling in your mind to being here, to taking a uncomfortable shape and staying with it. That's why I think it's so important that we take a moment to identify what the resistance is. Because once you know what you're working with, then you can start to make a plan as to how you're going to get through it. Let's let out one more really long exhale right here. Good. And we can come back up onto the hands if you're not already there. And just take a moment to push your bum back a little bit. And now walk your foot in so that you can now have one hand on either side of your foot. And you're in more of a traditional lunge-like shape. And we'll take our blocks beside us here. And in this lunge shape, you could stay with your hands down. You could start to lift your hands up on blocks. Start to roll the shoulders back and maybe even lean your chest back away from your thigh. So we're allowing the hips to sink down and up the length of the yoga mat. It might mean that your knee comes out over your toes a little bit, but that's okay. Just as long as it doesn't really go past your toes, and that's a good sign that you just need to back up that back leg a little bit more. Don't hesitate to put some padding underneath your back knee as well. And if you're really feeling like you haven't quite met the resistance yet, you would place your hands on the knee, pressing the knee forward as you lean your chest back. So we're likely going to start to feel something in the front of that left hip. The more that you drive the hip forward and lean the chest back, the more that you'll find that little spot. And again, you want to try and find a spot too where you're not creating tension somewhere else in your body, which I think is what exactly is what happens when we're trying to force ourselves through resistance. We're like, just do it. We're not addressing the actual resistance, and we're essentially beating ourselves up now. So now we got more than one problem, right? We're like creating new problems from ourselves. Now we're beating ourselves up, telling ourselves we're not good enough. And something's wrong with us because we haven't been able to get to it yet. I know what I need to do and I haven't done it yet. Something must be wrong with me. We don't need more problems. We don't need more problems. Use your exhale to try and soften through the sensations you're finding right now. And when we know what the resistance really is and we can address it, maybe right away we're having a hard time getting off the couch is because we picked the wrong moments to get off the couch. Maybe we're tired and we need to do something to help elevate our energy. Maybe what we're trying to do isn't the right thing for us, and we're just begrudgingly telling ourselves we should do that thing. I think the important thing here is to question, to ask a lot of questions. Give yourself one more really long exhale. Good. If you did lift your chest up, start to come back down again by bringing your hands to the floor. And then all of us now can just start to push the hips back. Ooh, and release some of that sensation. Oh, so much sensation. Let it dissolve. You can just kind of give your hips a little wiggle side to side. Good. I'm going to take that right foot now and walk it a little bit over to the left. And we'll just go ahead and bring the right knee down now. We're coming towards a pigeon pose if you're familiar with that posture. So the right foot is now in front of the left hip, and the right knee is still to the right, right? You might need to back up that left knee a little bit more to give you some good space. And we don't want to sit down on the right hip, and yet for some of us, it's going to be really uncomfortable just having the hip hanging in the air. So don't hesitate to put a little block or a pillow or a folded blanket underneath your hip. And then from here, you can start to bow in, just coming onto your elbows perhaps. Maybe you're coming all the way to the ground, or you might find that it is really cozy to just settle in with a pillow or a bolster right here. Another reason we sometimes meet a resistance when we're trying to make changes in our lives, when we're trying to take on healthy habits, when we're trying to get something done, it's just because we have such unrealistic expectations that we set upon ourselves. Perhaps we take on too much too fast. Perhaps we expect ourselves to become someone we're just not. Having healthy expectations is an important part of creating healthy changes. Some people are really all or nothing. They have to be all in or they won't do anything. I don't know if there's necessarily anything wrong with that, except the fact that, of course, if they slip a little bit, they start to feel like they shouldn't do any of it and they don't do anything. And, well, the nothing part maybe is not quite what they were going for. I know for myself, it's always more likely to reap rewards if I try not to take on too much all at once, to do it in baby steps. And then I'm more likely to actually get to it. Take a nice deep breath in and let a long exhale out. Good. And slowly now, pressing into your hands, lifting your chest up if you're not already there. And then pushing your hips back, start to slide that right knee back so you can come onto your hands and knees again. And do a couple of cat-cows here. Inhale as you lift your head and your tailbone. Exhale and round. Good. And we'll get ready to do all of that on the other side. So let's take that left foot forward to the outside of the hands. And just start right there on your hands. Letting your hips sink down, letting your knee maybe even bend out a little bit over the direction of your toes. You can choose to have your toes pointing straight forward or turn them out to the side. It's really what feels good for you here today. And then maybe you'd like to lower yourself down onto some blocks or a bolster or right to the ground. And one thing I see come up a lot with my coaching clients is feeling a resistance because we're trying to do something that used to work and we have this unrealistic expectation that it should still work. And I think that's why the fourth step is so important here in terms of meeting resistance. That fourth step being course correct often. What worked yesterday, yes, statistically means that it could theoretically work today, but if you're trying it again today and you're meeting this resistance and you're having a hard time getting it going, then maybe it doesn't work today. That's the reality, right? That's the possible reality here that we need to be open to, is that what worked for me yesterday might not work today. Maybe when you were younger, you were able to work out 4 days a week, but your life's different now. And you don't have the time or the energy. It's so important to be open to the fact that we might need to adapt. We might need to change how we do things. We change as people, our situation changes, the world changes. Don't need to remind anyone of that. The world changes all around us. Good. One more big exhale. Good. Come onto your hands if you're not already there. Start to push your hips back just a little bit. Start to walk your foot in. One hand on either side of your foot, and we will get those blocks as we come up. Starting to press that right hip down and up the length of the mat as we lean the chest back. And just kind of deciding where you're going to go on this side of your body, right? You try to do the same thing you did on the first side of the body, and it might have to be different. There's the course correcting, right? There it is. All of our yin yoga postures are about meeting the resistance. If you're like super cozy in a yin pose, I don't want to say you're doing it wrong because you're not necessarily doing it wrong, but maybe it's just you haven't gone deep enough into the pose, or even it's not a pose that your body necessarily needs. Because the whole point behind these postures is that we are meeting that resistance. We're discovering that that's where the resistance is, and we're going to hang out at that edge, and we're give the body a chance to adapt, to stretch, to release deep tensions in the tissues. And along the way, there's all kinds of head and heart that come up, all kinds of other resistance as well, with mind, with feeling. But we certainly aren't going to work through any resistance if we don't meet it where it's at. Give me one more exhale out of the mouth. Very nice. Okay, so we start by coming down. Push the hips back a little bit. Oh, good. We're going to work towards that pigeon shape, right? So take that left foot and bring it across to the right side of your mat. Come back forward, resting your left knee down. So now your foot should be in front of your right hip. Your knee is still on the left side of your mat. You might need to back up that back foot a little bit, just that back knee, just to get you some space. Don't hesitate to sit on the block if that's going to give you some more comfort. And don't hesitate to snuggle in to something cozy if that's going to help you find some ease as you breathe through the stretch in your outer hip. And the thing with meeting resistance is we're actually meeting it. We're not like running away from it or ignoring it. And come into the stretch posture and we stay, even if it's uncomfortable. I mean, you can adjust, you can come in and out a little bit if that's what's required. But we don't just give up and leave the shape entirely. We stay for the course, a couple of minutes. And that's how we know that we're going to see some results. We're going to see change happening. And the same is true in our lives. The resistance sometimes means we need to change course entirely. We need to do something else. And sometimes it just means we need to do little tweaks to adjust. But if we don't fully identify what the resistance is and start to create a plan to work with it, then we likely are going to abandon it. That's why New Year's resolutions often fail. We don't really feel we've identified why we're having a hard time sticking to it, and so we just don't. It's a mindset piece. There's often a little bit more to it than just kicking ourselves in the butt to get something done. Give me two more really big exhales right out of the mouth. Good. Come right back up again. Slow movements as you come out of your pose. Starting to move the hips back. Start to slide that knee back. Come onto your hands and your knees. And this time, give your hips a little wiggle, like a tail being wagged. Side to side there. And then come to lay down on your back. Bring your knees into your chest. Giving yourself a nice little squeeze, rocking from side to side. Just opening your knees, resting your hands on the inner knees, just to help open up the groin. You can rock your knees around a little bit here as you get into the hip socket. You can stay with this. This is a great way to modify happy baby pose if you find it a bit challenging. But if you're able to keep the back of the neck long and the head on the ground, then kick your feet up and hold the outer edges of your feet for happy baby. If you find that you come into this pose and your chin juts up and you're on the back of your head, that's a good sign that it's a little bit too much of a pose and you need to maybe hold a little lower or come to this alternative. Feel free to kick out one leg at a time and get a little stretch going. And then when you feel like you're ready for it, coming into Shavasana, extending your legs out, opening them about as wide as your sticky mat and having your arms rest by your sides with the palms open. Closing your eyes and letting your body settle to the ground. We all feel resistance from time to time, whether it's just a lazy moment or a lethargy. A lack of motivation, or so much more. And let us make a commitment here and now to not feel shame in those moments. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not driven enough. That resistance is just a sign that something needs your attention. Something needs to be tweaked. The plan, the desired outcome, the details around what it is you're trying to do. I invite you to ask a lot of questions. Why do I feel this way? What could I be doing different to feel better? Take a nice deep breath in and let it go. Inhale and let out a sigh. Stretch your arms overhead, point your toes away. Nice full body stretch. And bend your knees. Roll onto your side and press yourself up to sitting. And bringing your hands together in a prayer-like position with your thumbs against your sternum and your fingers fanning out from that place. And bow your head in slightly to your hands. Close your eyes. And feel your heart beating in your chest and your breath upon your fingertips. Thank you for joining me in this practice today. The light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste.